I just want to kind of set the stage for why I believe it's getting dark. And all of this is to kind of set up the new podcast that I am launching called Neon Bible, which is going to exclusively be on my YouTube channel, which is at Neon Bible UV, at Neon Bible UV. So I want to invite you to go ahead and go over there, subscribe to the Neon Bible podcast channel on YouTube. That's going to be just for now on YouTube. This is just to kind of start to kind of point people there from Instagram, from Facebook, and even from YouTube, because right now we're live in all three locations. So with that being said, as I begin to kind of share a little bit more with you about Neon Bible, I want to start with this phrase. You cannot legislate morality. You can't legislate morality. We live in very uncertain times. We want people to inherently make moral choices, but it's clear that very few people will do that. I'd like to make a distinction between people who are moral, good people, and then people who actually move beyond just the morals, which usually are a list of don'ts. Here are things that we should not do. Thou shalt not murder. Thou shalt not kill, right? This kind of stuff. Sadly, we are seeing more and more of that in my city of Charlotte. On Wednesday, we were just talking about the senseless murder of Irina Zarutska. And that's right here in Charlotte, North Carolina, where we live. She leaves war-torn Ukraine to come for safety and freedom in America, only to be senselessly slaughtered. If you've seen that video, I wouldn't go look for it if you haven't. But if you've seen that video, it is horrific. I mean, absolutely horrific. And this young 20-year-old girl from Ukraine just murdered in cold blood. And everybody sat there on the light rail, the Charlotte public transit. And I know they were afraid. This guy is acting in a crazy, crazy manner, but everybody sat there and she bled out and nobody did anything. You can't, I just want to keep saying it, you can't legislate morality. We are living in a day and time where people are deceived, number one, in some of the deepest ways that I think the evil one has ever been able to deceive people. But number two, people are demonically possessed. I mean, deeply demonically possessed. And so there is law, and there is a call for law and order through legislation, but we will never be able to legislate morality. I want to go just a little further now. The reality of morality is not doing bad things only. I did not lie. I did not cheat. I did not steal. Most people think I didn't do bad, therefore I'm good. I want to be very clear. The absence of bad is not the presence of good. Just because you've not done something bad, something immoral, does not mean you have actually done something worthy of changing the world around you. Now, I know most people don't think in terms like that, but I want you to know truth sets people free. When you advance truth, which definitely requires not doing immoral things, that presupposes that. But the reality of advancing good, beautiful, true things in the world begins with recognizing morality. So just because we can't legislate morality does not mean we should not understand what morality is. We should represent that we are different from the world because we're moral as God's people. And my presupposition here is this: only God's people can reach lost people. There's no one else coming for that work. And only God's people are actually light in these dark times. So if God's people don't even understand what morality is, we're in a problem. But if God's people only are moral, if God's people only Say, I'm not going to do these sets of wrong things. I'm going to be different from the world. I'm not going to do these bad, wrong things. That's really good and important. But the truth is that those are good things. And that is where good men and women are. But that places you directly on the moral sidelines. And see, the moral sidelines, that is not where we win culture. That is where Christians sit and watch and culture war. They lob these truth bombs out at the world. You're wrong. You shouldn't do this. You shouldn't steal. You shouldn't kill, right? It's true. It's true. It's right. But when we scream from the grandstand, sitting and watching, you know what that is? That's culture warring. We are saying we are better than you, but we're not willing to get in and engage with you by being light among darkness. Now, here's the superpower for the believer. It's John 1:5. And it truly is a superpower. When the light shines in the darkness will not overcome the light. So here's what we have to do. We have to recognize that the moral sidelines are where most Christians are. And that's why it's getting dark. We have to recognize that. If we do not recognize that, if we presume otherwise, I just say, look at the world. Look at the world. Is it dark? Yeah, it's dark. You know what that means? That's the absence of light. Well, where is the light? I heard from most of my different friends across the country, pastors and parishioners, the church, their churches, directly from these friends, were like double and even triple in attendance last Sunday. Now, that's predominantly lost people seeking truth because the church has been absent from the front line of telling the truth. It has even been some believers who have stopped going to church. Maybe they've backslidden in their faith. Maybe they're going through a really dark night of the soul and they realized, I got to get to church. That's great that they realized they needed to get near the light. But the sad truth is that the light is so compact into a building that if it's never intentionally dispersed, we have exactly what we have now. We have people deceived by lies. We have a world drowning in chaos because it's dark. And see, the power of light is to help people see so that they can move in the proper direction. The idea of a city on a hill that cannot be hidden is really about direction. It's about this city that sits on top of the hill, very much like a lighthouse, to say, here is the way. Here is where to go and not to go. Because there has been no light, people have been running headlong into chaos and lies and utter destruction. And that's on the people of God because we've been on the moral sidelines, yelling truth louder as we sit and watch. We can no longer sit and watch and culture war on the sidelines of Christian culture. We must rise and run to the front lines of the kingdom and recognize that the front line is out in the real world where we get to work. We no longer sit and watch, but we stand and work. And the work is to tell the truth about things that matter. So just want to go back to where I was last Wednesday before I heard the news of Charlie Kirk's murder. And I was already discussing with my wife how we are talking with our kids about the present darkness that continues to encroach. Weeks before that, a trans shooter went into a Catholic school in Minneapolis and began to shoot children. The day of Charlie Kirk's murder, another shooter in Colorado at a school. In fact, that morning, Vladimir Putin launched on Poland a missile strike from drones. He dropped a payload of missiles on Poland, and Poland is a part of the EU, the European Union, and the European Union has said to Putin early on in this Ukrainian war, and Putin is he is a maniacal person. I was talking with a neighbor earlier this evening out in the street of my neighborhood. I was playing with my kids and doing some yard work, and he was like, I've just tried to understand how and why Putin would do it. And I said, there is no understanding when you are dealing with a madman. There is no way to reason. There is no way to think about how he's thinking. And so this is lighting the fuse for, I hate to even say these words, World War III. If the European Union gets involved with something in Russia because of what Putin is doing, I fear that that won't just be a European Eastern war. I fear that that tips the entire world into something far greater. Now, I know we're much stronger, and of course, the Allied connection with the European Union would crush him. But I also fear that there's so many people in this country who would hate that we would do that, that would start something, dare I say, something that people have been talking about in light of Charlie's murder, a civil war in our own nation, because there are so many people who are just not able to think clearly and straight about confronting evil in the world, quite simply confronting evil. And so as you put all of those kind of pieces together, Irina Zarutska, Charlie Kirk, all the school shootings. There's a guy in Dallas who got, I think it was Dallas or Houston, got macheted to death and his head was decapitated. My son and I just spoke at a See You at the Pole rally, a big youth rally for, a bunch of churches, over 7 churches, and, hundreds and hundreds of kids. And I was talking with the key pastor overseeing it all, and somebody in his church committed suicide just that week. A 7-year-old child, Amber Alert, found him in a pond, drowned. I mean, there is just so much deep, deep darkness in the land that I fear that because the light is absent from the darkness, no one can see. No one can think clearly. And that's why it's getting late. And that's why it's very, very dark. So yeah, we are, the rhetoric is, let's legitimize violence. The way that national media and just people have been talking to social media for a long, long time. And I fear we've crossed a Rubicon. This is a Rubicon moment where we have gone over a boundary line with the murder of someone who is deeply devout in his faith, Charlie Kirk, and someone who went to have reasonable engagement and debate on college campuses where so many students began to rally on these secular campuses, began to rally behind somebody that they initially did not know, Charlie Kirk, right? Until then, he began to speak in such a legitimate, truthful way that began to draw the people who were either afraid of the truth or didn't know the truth and were awakened to the truth, and it united them. And it gave them steel. It gave them a spine. And that success, because he told the truth about things that matter, is why he got killed. I mean, that's what happened. And so when we legitimize violence against our opponents in the thought arena, Charlie Kirk was not a president, was not a sitting anything of political power. He wasn't. He wasn't a senator, right? He wasn't a mayor, a governor, wasn't anything. He was a man. He was a husband. He was a father. He was a Christian. And yes, he led an amazingly powerful organization, but that all just began as a grassroots movement to tell the truth among the deception and den of lies on college campuses. That's what this is. And so when we begin to assassinate and murder and gun down people that we disagree with. It's a Rubicon moment. I mean, he wasn't even really a journalist. He was a cultural commentator. And this is what fascist countries, this is what communist countries do. People who verbally stand out against the regime, they find themselves dead. But not in this country, because of the beauty and the power of free speech. It was profound to listen to Erica Kirk. His wife is now the widow of Charlie Kirk. And her words have stuck with me. If you thought my husband's mission was powerful before, you have no idea what you have unleashed. The cries of this widow will echo around the world like a battle cry. The movement will not die. Wow. Profound. There is so much emotion, so much happening around all of these things, but it just seems that the Charlie Kirk murder, the assassination, the martyrdom of Charlie Kirk is just the pinnacle moment of all of these dark elements rising. And until we stop looking the other way, until we stop doing that, and we look at this senseless, deceptive culture that we live in, we won't recognize the opportunity. So I want to just talk for a minute about the need for spiritual awakening. You cannot legislate morality. We need spiritual awakening. And I believe with all of my heart that when good men sit on the sidelines and watch, evil continues to rise and win. But when moral, good men recognize that just the absence of not doing wrong things, of being moral by not doing wrong things, is not the presence of good, they begin to search and realize, what have we missed? And I'll tell you what we've missed. We've missed God's people running to the darkness as light. And so in one word, what that is mission. The moral people of God have ceased to be the missional people of God. They have refused the front line and settled for the sideline to culture war rather than run to the front line and culture win. Just win the culture, because the truth sets people free. We have the evidence of that in Charlie Kirk. Truth sets people free. He was winning because he was just showing up on the front line. Jesus has already won the victory over sin, Satan, and death. We probably, before Charlie's murder, would have said, you probably won't have to die for your faith. Well, guess what? You might die for your faith. But the question is this. Acts chapter 7, this is what I shared with the students Sunday night. Will you live in such a way that when your time comes, will your life cause Christ to rise and applaud the work you have done? You see, that's what Stephen said as he's being stoned. Stephen brought words to his walk. They realized who he was. His walk had separated him out of the world, and they demanded an answer, and he began to give this really pretty lengthy response in words. And so he began to put into words what his walk had already been showing to the world. And that's what got him stoned, his words, telling the truth about what matters. And in that moment, as he's being stoned, he looks up, he prays. And who's going to pray when they're getting stoned? Powerful, amazing. But he looks up in this prayer and he says, I see heaven opening up like a scroll, and I see the Son of Man, which is Jesus, standing at the right hand of God, as if to say, well done. Well done. I applaud your work. So will our lives, when they're all said and done, will they cause Christ to rise and applaud the work of just being a witness because we've chose to run to the missional front line and just win the culture, man? Just win hurting, lost people, not because you're this amazing person, not because you're this amazing orator, not because you have all of the apologetics sorted out, but because you just love the Lord your God. He's called you to this, and you want to respond through obedience, and you love a lost world who otherwise is dying and on their way to hell. And yes, this may cost you your life. But if it doesn't, and you cower on the sideline, are you a person of faith? Is your faith real if you're afraid of the dark? I call it um, the darkness test. When you go into the darkness, do you attract people out of the darkness to the light? Do they see your light as a hopeful, loving light to come sit at the fire of light and warm themselves because it's so cold and dark? To come and cook a wonderful meal as Jesus did to those disciples who had left following him. They'd left the mission after Jesus was crucified. He calls out to them as they're fishing. They've stopped fishing for men, and they've gone back to fishing for souls. And they've caught nothing all night. He calls from the seashore, "Have you caught anything?" And they're like, "Who is that?" We don't want to admit we've caught nothing. We're fishermen. How do we say that? Well, they were so depressed and tired that they just, we haven't caught anything. And he just casually says, "Cast your net on the other side." And why would a fisherman think some random guy from the shore who they don't know to be Jesus yet? Why would we listen to him? Well, when you're at the end of the rope, you're at the beginning of all God can do. And so I think that's where they were. They were just at the end of themselves. And they cast their net on the other side and they record one of the greatest catches that we see in all the Gospels. I wonder if we as the people of God are at the end of our rope. Are we at the end of our rope where we've said, our will, our ways, done with us. We are ready to take the light into the darkness. So when you go into the darkness, do people come out of the darkness to your light and say, "Man, your light is so warm. I'm so cold. Man, your light helps me see. Will you walk with me? Man, your light, I can sit by the fire of your light." And as Jesus did on a bed of coals, cook some bread and fish, nourished those weak and weary souls. Will your light be a fire of faith that draws lost people out of the deceptive darkness into the freeing, loving light of Jesus Christ? You see, that's what it's going to take. And that's where we are. We've got to move from the moral sidelines to the missional front lines. We've got to stop sitting and watching and warring against culture. We have to rise and run to the front line to stand and work and win culture. The harvest is plentiful, Jesus says. There are plenty of opportunities to bring lost people to the Lord. Charlie Kirk knew that. That's why you go where people are to dark places. And you begin to engage and connect in a compelling and beautiful way. And as you do that, you'll set people free. Does your light work? Try it out. Get in and around as many lost people as you can. Begin to love them. Be winsome. Don't war. Don't war. Be winsome. The evil one, his name is Satan. He is the enemy. The people that he has deceived, the people that are possessed demonically, they are not the enemy. They may do evil and they may be terrible in how they are laughing and mocking the senseless death of Charlie Kirk. They are not the enemy. They're deeply, deeply disturbed, deeply deceived. They need the light. So the enemy is Satan, not the deceived. And the way that we bring the war to Satan is when we win the lost. That's when we win. And so we really don't have a war. And so we're not warring against Satan. Jesus has already done that. He says in the Gospels, "I have come to destroy the work of the evil one." Okay? The work of the evil one is still vividly on display, but for the believer, they are elevated. It doesn't mean that they can't fall, but the believer, when they understand the work and the win of Jesus, stand on those shoulders. And when they begin to engage a lost, dark world, they realize that we're not warring against the lost, dark world. We're warring against the evil one in the power of Jesus and what he's already done. And we're just standing here claiming the victory to bring this lost person out of the deception into the marvelous, profound light of Jesus Christ by loving them and telling them the truth. You don't really love someone until you can tell them the truth. So Jesus goes on to say, the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. So my great goal in Neon Bible is to help God's people read God's word in such a profound way that they move from just only reading God's word to reaping God's wisdom so they can effectively reach God's world and then bring light, illumination, Neon Bible to a dark world, because that's what wins. That's what always has won. And that is what the plan of winning has to continue to be. We cannot declare war. We cannot go after people who are the mission in terms of, fighting them. We have to recognize that there is evil. And when we try in our flesh to fight against evil, guess what? Satan wins. He does. He does. Don't let Satan draw you out onto the battlefield of flesh. So much of the arguing and so much of the anger is a fleshly response from believers. Stop it. Quit it. Cut it out. Satan is owning you in your arguing and in your anger. He's owning you. And so quit the culture warring, quit arguing, quit announcing that you're better than, run to the lost world. Abandon your own will and way. And when you do, you rise above the darkness, because the light, when it shines in the darkness, always pushes it back. I just want to end with this. You can't legislate morality. We need spiritual awakening. That is preceded by God's people doing 1 Chronicles 7:14. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven. I will forgive their sin, and I will heal the land. Lord, that's what we need. We need your people to humble themselves and pray and seek your face, and then run to the darkness and be the light in the most winsome and winning way. That's the work. And I pray that we would get more of God's people who are cowering on the moral sidelines to rise and run to the missional front lines and advance the kingdom amidst these dark days. Guys, thanks for following along. Hopefully you've been able to be encouraged, and I pray that you would seek the face of God and then move forward by faith into these dark, difficult days. Face your fear and find the freedom that Christ has for you. Don't know about our book, Rescue at the Reef, the miraculous true story of a little boy with big faith. Our 10-year-old son 3 years ago was attacked by a 9-foot bull shark 9 miles offshore as we were diving in the lower Florida Keys, and miracle after miracle after miracle happened for Jameson Jr. to be alive today. Lost his leg below the knee. His leg was bleeding to death 9 miles offshore. And the Lord showed up in some of the most stunning ways. And you got to get the book to read. I won't take any more time to really tell, but 4 days after the attack, after his life had been spared, he says, "Dad, will you take me back to the reef? Will you put a plan together so we can return to the reef?" And I was like, simultaneously scared and so proud of my son. 10 weeks to the day after the shark attack, we returned to the reef. And before we jumped in, I said, and the reason he wanted to do this, at 10 years old, he knew. just innate inside of his heart. I got to face my fear, Dad. I got to face my fear. Now, I got him on the boat. First words out of his mouth as I see the unbelievable damage. His leg was gone below the knee. Just his foot just barely attached to the tibia bone at the bottom. Just a bone and a foot all below the knee. Just bleeding out, actively dying. Thought I was going to hold my son as he breathed his last breath because we're 9 miles offshore. Just seems impossible. I'm in shock and I scream no in horror. And my 10-year-old son, as I'm looking in his big, beautiful blue eyes, he hears his daddy cry out. He wants to comfort me. And he says, Daddy, it's okay. Jesus is going to save me. It was like the hope of heaven broke in that moment. He just spoke truth to fear. And he just upended everything with that confession. And miracle after miracle after miracle after miracle for this profound son of mine to be alive. But 4 days later, he wants to return and face his fear. 10 weeks to the day, we go back to the reef. Before we jump in, I said, how you feeling? He goes, I'm scared, Dad. I'm scared. And I just said, I am too, man. And how many of you know that when you go to face your fear, by the way, every one of you have a story to tell, but every single one of you have a shark in your story. How many of you know that when you go to face your sharks, there's no fences in the ocean. They don't put the sharks in a pen so that you can face your fear and jump in without any sharks. No, there was the very ever-present reality of sharks that day. How do you feel? I'm afraid. I am too. We acknowledged it. It's okay. It's okay. I said, well, look, we've come all the way out here. You don't need to jump in. You've already faced your fear. And he goes, no, we got to go all the way. We got to go all the way. And we dove in and just flashback for the first few minutes of everything from the attack came back to him. But he stayed in the water. He held the line. And he, probably about 2 minutes later, the immense joy that we'd always had of diving in our favorite waters there in the Florida Keys just flooded back to him, rushed back to him. And it was like 2.5 hours later, we had to literally pull him out of the water because we couldn't get him out. And we talked later, and it was just the reality of I can choose to focus on fear, or I can focus on who's with me in this moment. And it's my Father, my Heavenly Father. Yes, his earthly father was there, but it's the Heavenly Father who is with you in your fear. You are not alone. And so as you move forward by faith, don't focus on fear. Focus on the Father who's secured freedom for you. And as you move forward with the keys of faith, hope, and love, just know that those keys always unlock the door of fear so that freedom can begin to flood the world you're opening that door to. So unlock the doors, set people free, move forward by faith, but do it by facing your fear. And don't be afraid, because the Lord your God, he is with you. You're never alone. God bless you guys. Have an amazing night. And we'll be talking to you soon. Neon Bible YouTube channel. Go subscribe now. So as soon as episodes start dropping, you'll get alerts and you'll be getting those. Rescue at the Reef, anywhere books are sold. We have a website, rescueatthereef.com. We also have a Brave Like Jameson, Instagram, Facebook, and then my stuff that you're already following on is Jameson Reader, Facebook, and Instagram. And then again, one more time, Neon Bible, at Neon Bible UV on YouTube for the Neon Bible podcast. Until next time, my friends, God bless you.